start off by talking about these latest developments with Turkey, Syria, and the United States.
Well, I think it's a very complicated situation in which none of the political actors know quite what to do, what will work, and what they're really trying to achieve. And the whole situation there is complicated, in my view, unnecessarily by the refusal to treat the conflict as potentially solvable by diplomacy rather than relying totally on military power, which has consistently failed in the region. American interventions, especially the Iraqi intervention of 2003, is really the proximate cause of this surge of extremism in the region. And we, over and over again, rely on military intervention and refuse to learn the lesson of the 21st century, that wars are not won by weapons alone. They're won primarily in this period by securing a political outcome that reflects not only the equities involved, but also what the people subject to these pressures wish to achieve. Self-determination on the ground is a very important dimension of political reality that Washington can't seem to perceive, because it's invested so heavily in the military machine and it's so powerful within the bureaucracy that it's almost impossible for our elected leaders to think outside the military box. See, if Iran was brought into this diplomatic framework, it's been excluded mainly, I think, due to Israeli objections to having Iran be a political player in the region. And that limits the possibility of solving the Syrian conflict, which in turn makes it very difficult to conduct this kind of limited war against ISIS. So and Turkey's caught in the middle between...
You think if Iran were included, this could be resolved much more easily?
I think you never know. Diplomacy is filled with uncertainties and different kinds of trade-offs, but not to try to solve it that way is really a terrible failure of political imagination. I think Turkey has much more flexible leadership than the American media portrays, and it's a much more balanced. Erdogan is not Putin, the way he's sort of presented as this kind of autocratic, domineering figure in the Turkish scene. That's the way the opposition in Turkey wants to perceive him. But there's a very capable prime minister who's Ahmet Davutoglu, who has a very nuanced sense of the difficulties confronting Turkey in shaping a policy. On the one hand, they're trying to solve the problems with Turkish Kurds, the Kurdish minority. On the other hand, the PKK has become more militant in this phase, perhaps to increase their bargaining power in this political process of ending the Turkish conflict. So there's a Turkish dimension, and then there's the extremist ISIS dimension, which Turkey probably is partly responsible for because of its earlier preoccupation with getting the Syrian regime, the Assad regime, overthrown. So the enemy of your enemy has become the sort of operational logic of the region.
So the Turkish warplanes bombed the Kurdish PKK rebels for the first time since the 2012 truce, but they also let Kurds go over into Syria to fight.
You know, that illustrates this tension between opposing goals. They want the Kurds to act against ISIS, but they, of course, don't want the Kurds to resume their internal struggle against the Turkish central government. And for whatever reasons, it may be internal to the Kurdish movement in Turkey that they have assumed a more militant posture. And the bombing of the PKK didn't come in a vacuum. The PKK was doing things. They were capturing Turkish children, and they were committing various acts in some of the villages in eastern Turkey. So it's a complicated. Everything in that region is complicated.
The Kurds feel immensely oppressed in Turkey.
And they have been. On the other hand, this government has tried more than any other
Leyla
government.
Zana, the famous Kurdish parliamentarian, imprisoned simply because she spoke Kurdish in the Turkish parliament.
Yeah, but this government is moving beyond that phase of the Turkish-Kurdish relationship, and it has a much more pluralistic sense of what will make Turkey stable and successful. And if you read Erdogan's acceptance speech after he won the presidential election, it was all about seeing how to implement a pluralist vision of Turkey, which means bringing the minorities into a position of equality, which goes directly against the Ataturk Kemalist view that the ethnic identity of Turks should all be Turkish. And he called, the Kurds mountain Turks, for instance, and forbade the language. And it was all part of this state-building project that went far too far.